spacecraft on September 23rd, heading for a parachute-assisted landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan. Dyson will have spent 6 months in space on this, her third flight into space, while Kononenko and Shub will come home after completing a full year on orbit. Pettit will remain on board the space station through March of next year, returning home at that time with Ovchinin and Vagner on Soyuz MS-26. Kononenko, who is the chief of the cosmonaut corps, has already spent more days in space than any other human and recently passed 1,000 days in space on June 4th on this, his 5th spaceflight. At the time of landing, Kononenko and Shub will have spent 374 days in space, and for Kononenko, a total of 1,111 days in space. Pettit's launch today mirrors that of Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov, who is scheduled to launch to the International Space Station as part of the SpaceX Crew 9 Dragon later this month. This is providing a reciprocal crew exchange capability to maintain safe and continuous space station operations. Here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room, the Orbit 2 team of flight controllers is currently on deck. They completed a handover period just a few hours ago, and the team here in Houston is being led by Flight Director Judd Freeling, who you can see in the middle of your screen, and to his right is Capcom or Capsule Communicator Luca Parmentano. The Capcom is responsible for communicating with the crew aboard the International Space Station and serves as the voice link between teams on the ground and the station crew. Freeling, Parmentano, and the rest of the flight control team are currently monitoring the systems on the International Space Station, which will be the final destination for the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft later today.
Yes, I fixed it. Copy.
The team in Mission Control Houston are also working with the team in Mission Control Moscow. You are now seeing a view from the balcony of the Russian Mission Control Center in Koryov, just outside of Moscow. Launch through spacecraft separation is controlled at the blockhouse in Baikonur, but at the time of spacecraft separation, the flight control will be transferred to the team at this Russian Mission Control Center. We are now just over an hour and 3 minutes from the launch of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft. Again, you are seeing a live view of the Soyuz MS-26 on the launch pad in Baikonur.
Very well.
Liftoff today, again, is scheduled for 11:23 a.m. Central Time, 12:23 p.m. Eastern Time, and 9:23 p.m. in Baikonur in the Central Asian Desert. The countdown continues to proceed on schedule with no issues being reported from the engineers at the blockhouse in Baikonur. Coming up in just over 30 minutes, about 32 minutes from now, we will also have a go, no-go poll for launch. Atop the Soyuz 2.1A booster, strapped into their seats in the descent module of the Soyuz, are NASA's Don Pettit, Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Vagner. You can see them there in that photo on your screen. Ovchinin is serving as the Soyuz commander and is in the center seat of the descent module, and he will be flanked to his left by Ivan Vagner, who is serving as board engineer 1, and then to Ovchinin's right will be Don Pettit, who is serving as board engineer 2. Just a short while ago, the crew was in the descent module and they completed the suit leak checks. And this will be Wagner's second flight into space, Pettit's fourth, having already accrued 370 days in space, and also Ovchinin's fourth flight into space, having accrued 375 days of previous spaceflight experience. For now, the countdown is now at about 1 hour and 1 minute away from launch and ticking back for the launch of the Soyuz MS-26 crew to the International Space Station. Again, that launch is scheduled for 11:23 a.m. Central Time, 12:23 p.m. Eastern Time, and 9:23 p.m. in Baikonur. Don Pettit's launch today is his fourth visit to the International Space Station. He first flew as part of the Expedition 6 crew, which launched on STS-113, the Space Shuttle Endeavour, and then returned to Earth on Soyuz TMA-1 in 2003. And now you are seeing a live view inside the Soyuz capsule. Again, inside the capsule we have NASA's Don Pettit and Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Vagner. Ovchinin is in the center seat, and then to his left is Ivan Vagner, and to his right is NASA's Don Pettit. Again, today's launch marks the 4th spaceflight for NASA astronaut Don Pettit. He first flew to the International Space Station as part of the Expedition 6 crew, which launched on STS-113, the Space Shuttle Endeavour, and then he returned to Earth on a Soyuz TMA-1 in 2003. His next venture into space was part of the STS-126 mission of the Space Shuttle Endeavour in 2008, and then he returned for a third visit to the space station aboard Soyuz TMA-03M in 2012 and was part of Expeditions 30 and 31. With everything proceeding in good shape towards launch, and now just under an hour, about 59 minutes away from launch, let's go ahead and take a moment to learn more about NASA astronaut Don Pettit and his road to becoming an astronaut.
What got me interested in science? I think my backyard back in Silverton, Oregon. You walk outside down the sidewalk. It's like, whoa, look at that. Why are they walking in a line? Story, and the answers aren't in the back of the story. You have to figure things out yourself. So I got interested in science because of Earth. We conduct science on the International Space Station because it is an environment where human beings are not innately meant to be. And because of that, you can learn things about human physiology. You can learn things about physics and chemistry that are impossible to learn on Earth. There are two main categories of science. You have the programmatic science. This is well-planned, well-thought-out, peer-reviewed, and uplinked to station with the supplies needed. And then you have what I call science of opportunity. And this is science that comes to mind while you are there, simply because you are there and you can do it because you can. Scientific disciplines that I've dabbled in on the International Space Station: fluid physics, classic physics, chemistry, biology, plant growth, Earth observations that are unique from an orbital environment. A number of my science of opportunity investigations have resulted in peer-reviewed scientific papers. One is growing sodium chloride crystals. And a salt shaker won't work in weightlessness, right? It'll be a mess. So the NASA food people have a little squeeze bottle of a saturated solution of sodium chloride, and you can put that on your food if you want to add salt. And I was using this saturated solution of sodium chloride to do aqueous phase crystal growth of sodium chloride crystals, and there were a number of fascinating observations that could be made by doing this in weightlessness, and resulted in these 3 publications. The particle agglomeration. I had bags of various kinds of powder. You've got powdered milk, and you've got freeze-dried coffee in a bag. And instead of putting water in it, you can blow the bag up and you can look at it and you can see what happens when you shake it up. And I was playing with all these bags, and in every case, these particles, millimeter size, just floating around, would rapidly, in tens of seconds, form centimeter size clumps. And I thought, wow, isn't that cool? All these different particles. I filmed it, and Stan Love, who's an astronaut in the office, who is a planetary geologist by training, he saw that, and he said that this has implications to planet formation. How you go from something that's 1 millimeter to something the size of your fist has not been really understood. And these simple videos that I downlinked helped scientists understand what that process is. And it doesn't get any better than that when casual observations, simply because you are there and you can, calling it science of opportunity, leads to opening up a whole new level of investigation. We had some educational demonstrations with Legos, making various things for student downlink. And after that was all done, I said, hey, can I use the Legos to make something that I'd like to make? And sure, go ahead, use the Legos. And I used the Legos to make a Van de Graaff generator. And this allowed me to have a source of static electric voltage, and I did a lot of observations with water and other solutions, making these Taylor cones in the weightless environment. And then one time I was giving a presentation to university level students, and we started talking, and we had this collaboration, and using my data with graduate students, published a paper in Phys Rev Letters. And the neatest aspect about this paper is in the experimental section, it says roller and belt Van de Graaff generator was made on space station out of Legos. And it's like, wow, Phys Rev Letters, peer-reviewed scientific publication, and part of the data came from a piece of equipment that was made from Legos. That's science of opportunity. It's inevitable when you have a laboratory, whether it's on Earth or in space or on the moon, there will be science of opportunity because of the people that are doing research. They will have other ideas, and they will see things simply because they are there and they can, and they'll mess around a little bit, and maybe most of that won't go anywhere, but every once in a while there'll be one of those that turn into the next generation of programmatic science.
I'm Don Pettit. I'm a NASA astronaut.
If you're just joining us, you are again looking at a live view of the Soyuz MS-26 on the launch pad at Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in the Central Asian Desert, where we are just under 52 minutes away from launch. The launch will send NASA astronaut Don Pettit, as well as Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Vagner, to the International Space Station. Liftoff today is scheduled for 11:23 a.m. Central Time, 9:23 p.m. in Baikonur. The countdown continues to proceed on schedule with no issues being reported from the launch engineers in Baikonur. Coming up in just over 20 minutes, we will also have a go, no-go poll for today's launch. And then coming up in the countdown around 10:43 a.m. Central, the Soyuz will go to autonomous power and it will take it off the ground power. And then shortly after that, we will see the gantry arms that are currently surrounding the spacecraft on the launch pad being lowered. There will still be 2 service umbilicals attached to the side of the Soyuz booster, and we will see the retraction of the first umbilical around the T-minus 35 second mark, and then the second umbilical will retract around the T-minus 15 second mark, which will initiate engine sequence start. The crew flew to the Baikonur Cosmodrome from their training base at Star City, Russia on August 26th for final pre-launch training and inspections of their Soyuz spacecraft. With the crew in Baikonur completing their training template, the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft was encapsulated into the upper stage of the Soyuz booster in the integration building last week. After the 3 stages of the Soyuz 2.1A booster were mated together, the Soyuz rocket began its trek to the launch pad shortly after sunrise on Sunday, and then it was hauled to the pad horizontally on a rail car in a process that took about 30 minutes to complete.
Once at the pad, the Soyuz was raised hydraulically to its vertical position for final pre-launch preparations, where it stands today.
Again, you are seeing a live view of the Soyuz 2.1A booster with the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft atop at the launch pad at Site 31 in the Baikonur Cosmodrome. We are just under 50 minutes, about 49 minutes away from launch of the Soyuz.
That survives the return to Earth. The orbital module at the top is 9.8 feet long. It connects to the descent module via pressurized hatch. This is where the crew has a small amount of room to move around following launch during the flight to the space station. It has a docking mechanism, hatch, and rendezvous antennas located at the front end. The docking mechanism is used to dock with the space station, and the hatch allows entry into the orbiting complex. The rendezvous antennas are used by the automated docking system, which uses radar, to maneuver toward the station for docking. There is also a forward-looking window in the module that the crew can use to take manual measurements of distance and closing speed with a laser rangefinder in the event of failure of the rendezvous radar system.
The propulsion module houses the oxygen storage tanks, the main engine, and the attitude control thrusters, avionics, and communication and control equipment. The propulsion portion of this module handles all orbital maneuvers, including those needed for the rendezvous with the space station
and the deorbit burn at the end of the spacecraft's mission. Before they are deployed, the two solar arrays are folded against the body of the propulsion module, which, along with the orbital module, separates from the descent module after the deorbit burn. The solar panels span almost 35 feet. The entire vehicle in the unlikely event that the crew needs to leave the station unexpectedly.
Retract service towers to horizontal
Again, you are
position.
seeing a live view of the Soyuz
Retract
booster with
service
its
towers
Soyuz
to
MS-26
horizontal position.
spacecraft atop at the launch pad at Site 31 in Kazakhstan. Launch countdown will include several important milestones. At about T-7 minutes, the pre-launch operations will be complete, and at this point in the countdown, the Soyuz booster will be ready for launch.
About a minute later, at T-6 minutes, the physical launch key will be inserted into the launch bunker to transition the launch sequence into automatic mode. About 30 seconds later, at T-5.5 minutes, launch control will report that the range in Baikonur is clear and that the Soyuz rocket is ready to begin its journey. About 30 seconds after that, at T-5 minutes, the onboard systems of the Soyuz will be switched to onboard control, and the commander's cockpit displays and controls will be activated, and the crew will close their helmets. And you are now seeing retraction of the gantry arms. So those gantry arms surrounding the spacecraft are currently being lowered, and the two service umbilicals will remain attached to the side of the Soyuz booster until we get to the final seconds of the launch countdown. The first umbilical will retract around the T-35 second mark, followed by the second umbilical shortly thereafter, retracting around the T-15 second mark. So again, as we start to proceed into the final moments of the launch countdown, currently under 42 minutes away from launch, we'll continue walking you through what some of those final milestones will be. So around the T-4 minute mark, the fuel lines and other elements of the rocket engine will be purged with nitrogen, which will fireproof them. And about a minute and 15 seconds later, at T-2 minutes 45 seconds, the booster's fuel tanks will be pressurized for flight. And then at T-1.5 minutes, the ground propellant feed will be terminated to the Soyuz booster. Followed shortly thereafter, the Soyuz will be switched to internal power, and then we'll be in the final minute of the launch countdown. Again, we will see the first umbilical tower separate from the booster at T-35 seconds, and that is when we will also have auto sequence start. Shortly after that, the ground umbilical to the third stage will be disconnected, and then we will see the second umbilical tower separate, which will initiate engine sequence start, and then the launch command will be issued, and we will be in the final seconds of the launch countdown before seeing that liftoff today at 11:23 a.m. Central Time, 12:23 p.m. Eastern Time, 9:23 p.m. in Baikonur. At the time of the Soyuz launch today, the International Space Station will be flying 260 miles over southwest Kazakhstan, and the International Space Station will be 284 miles behind Soyuz and will pass directly over the launch site 20 seconds after launch, leapfrogging past the Soyuz.
Copy.
Copy all.
Is armed. Copy.
And now on your screen, you can see that the gantry arms that were surrounding the Soyuz have been completely lowered as we continue to proceed in the launch countdown. We're now just under 40 minutes away from today's launch. In just under 10 minutes, we will see the go, no-go poll for launch taking place. After today's liftoff, we will go through several different milestones, and then about 8 minutes and 45 seconds after launch, the third stage engine of the Soyuz booster will shut down and the Soyuz will separate from its launch vehicle in its preliminary orbit, deploying its solar arrays and navigational antennas. At that point, the 3 Soyuz crew members will trail the space station by 1,176 miles, and the chase will begin, resulting in docking to the Rassvet module on the Earth-facing side of the station's Russian segment at 2:33 p.m. Central Time, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time later today. At the predicted time of docking, Soyuz and the International Space Station will be flying 260 miles over southeast Russia, northeast of the town of Belgorod.
RPN on input 2, and also until command.
At the launch site on the steppe of Kazakhstan, NASA officials are on hand to watch the beginning of the journey for NASA astronaut Don Pettit and his Roscosmos cosmonaut crewmates Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Vagner. Leading the NASA delegation on hand for today's launch is NASA's Associate Administrator for Space Operations, Ken Bowersox, Johnson Space Center Deputy Director Steve Kerner, Johnson Space Center Director of Flight Operations Norm Knight, International Space Station Deputy Program Manager Dina Cantella, and NASA's Chief Astronaut Joe Acaba. Additionally, with them, they have NASA's Public Affairs Officer Courtney Beasley, who filed this audio report a short time ago.
Thanks, Anna, and hello from the launch viewing site at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. I am coming to you from about 2 miles from Launch Pad 31, where we see the spacecraft and rocket poised for launch this evening. It's a comfortable night here at the viewing site weather-wise, with temperatures around 68 degrees and slight winds. It's been a busy several days for our team here, starting with our arrival into Kazakhstan Saturday afternoon. We had a chilly and rainy rollout of the Soyuz MS-26 early Sunday morning, starting at 7:30 a.m. There was some slight rain off and on, with temperatures around 45 degrees Fahrenheit. The rocket was lifted upright and positioned for launch, where it stands now, ready to send Don Pettit and his Roscosmos crewmates Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Vagner to the International Space Station. As most people know, Pettit is very passionate about photography. At the press conference here in Baikonur yesterday, Pettit stated that his photography specialty is taking pictures of Earth and the stars at nighttime. He said that on this mission, they have 3 new lenses optimized for nighttime photography, so that's something he's really looking forward to trying out once he's on board. When he was asked what else he's most looking forward to spending his free time doing aboard the station, he said he's most looking forward to doing only the things he can do in space that he can't replicate down here on Earth. We also got a little insight into the zero-G indicator for this mission from Ovchinin. He explained that the crew is flying a stuffed animal corgi dog to the station with them. Ovchinin said his family has a corgi, and he talked with the crew, and they decided to have the stuffed animal accompany them on their mission. He mentioned the corgi will remain on board with them throughout the mission, and it will remind him of his family. For now, though, Anna, we are standing by at the viewing site, ready for launch. Don has a group of family, friends, and our NASA colleagues here at the viewing site ready to cheer the crew on for launch today. We'll send it back to you and the teams in Houston as you count down to the final moments before liftoff.
And thank you, Courtney. We are now approaching about 35 minutes away from launch of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft. Again, liftoff today is scheduled for 11:25 a.m. Central Time, 12:23 a.m. Eastern Time, 9:23 p.m. in Baikonur to send NASA astronaut Don Pettit and his Roscosmos crewmates, Soyuz commander Alexei Ovchinin and flight engineer Yvonne Vagner on a 2-orbit journey to the International Space Station, where they will then join the Expedition 71 crew. Following liftoff in just about 35 minutes from now, the spacecraft will see several milestones. At about 1 minute and 54 seconds after launch, the escape tower will be jettisoned. A few seconds after that, the 4 strap-on boosters will be jettisoned. After they complete their job, they will drop away at an altitude of 28 statute miles. About 30 seconds after that, at launch plus 2 minutes and 37 seconds, the launch shroud will be jettisoned as the Soyuz rocket is flying at an altitude of 48 miles. And then about 4 minutes and 45 seconds after launch, the 3rd stage will ignite. The 3rd stage ignites while the 2nd stage is still burning, which is why the Soyuz has an open area in between the 2nd and 3rd stages. A few seconds after that, the core booster will separate and the Soyuz will then be propelled by the single engine of the Soyuz 3rd stage. And then at about 8 minutes and 45 seconds after launch, we will have 3rd stage cutoff and separation. The spacecraft will then begin automatically executing pre-programmed commands to deploy the antennas and solar arrays. After the Soyuz makes it onto orbit, control of the spacecraft from here on out will then be overseen by the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow and Koryov. Soyuz will then begin its short 2-orbit chase to reach the International Space Station today, and we will see rendezvous and docking scheduled for 2:33 p.m. Central, 3:30 p.m. Eastern later today.
16.3. Selection of any formats is enabled. Copy. This is 16.3. After leak checks of the suits, the pressure remains at 816, just as it been at that moment. Copy.
And we are now about 32.5 minutes away from today's launch of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft atop its Soyuz 2.1A booster in the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. And we will see a launch go-no-go poll in just about 2 minutes from now. Today's launch and docking of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft will set the International Space Station up for a busy sequence of upcoming crew rotations. In just a couple of weeks, we will see the departure of the Soyuz MS-25 spacecraft that is scheduled for September 23rd, and this will bring NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson and her Roscosmos crewmates Nikolai Chub and Alexander Gurbenkin back to Earth with a landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan. The departure of the Soyuz MS-25 spacecraft will also mark the start of Expedition 72. Shortly after that landing, we will also have the launch of NASA's SpaceX Crew 9 mission, carrying NASA astronaut Nick Hague and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov to the International Space Station. Crew 9 will then have a brief handover period with Crew 8 before Crew 8 returns back to Earth, carrying NASA astronauts Matt Dominic, Michael Barrett, and Jeanette Epps, along with Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gurbenkin. And we are now just over 31 minutes away from today's launch. Everything continuing to proceed as planned and no issues currently being reported at the blockhouse in Baikonur. NASA astronaut Don Pettit, who is launching aboard the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft in just a short while from now, has been a part of NASA's astronaut corps since he was selected in 1996. And prior to becoming an astronaut, he worked as a staff scientist at the Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico. He is a veteran of 3 space flights and previously served as the science officer for Expedition 6 in 2003 and operated the robotic arm for STS-126 in 2008 and served as a flight engineer for Expeditions 30 and 31 in 2012, where he lived aboard the International Space Station for more than a year. And there on your screen, you can see photos of today's crew launching aboard the Soyuz MS-26. Now you are seeing a live view into the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft, where NASA astronaut Don Pettit is strapped in awaiting launch along with his Roscosmos crewmates, Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Vagner.
Area. Copy all.
We are now just under 30 minutes away from today's launch of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft.
Copy.
That launch is scheduled for 11:23 a.m. Central Time, 9:23 p.m. in Baikonur. This view that you're seeing of the Soyuz crew, they are currently atop the Soyuz 2.1A booster and are strapped into their seats in the descent module of the Soyuz. Again, in the Soyuz and launching today are NASA's Don Pettit and Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Vagner. Ovchinin is the Soyuz commander, and he is in the center seat of the descent module, and flanked to his left is Ivan Vagner, who is serving as board engineer 1, and to Ovchinin's right is Don Pettit, who is serving as board engineer 2. We are just over 28 minutes away from launch of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft. Everything continuing to proceed as planned, and you are seeing a live view of the Soyuz 2.1A booster with the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft aboard at the launch site in Baikonur.
My team was evacuated to a safe area, asking for permission to go offline. Copy. You may go offline.
Launch day for the 3 crew members began several hours ago as they were awakened at their cosmonaut hotel crew quarters to begin their final pre-launch activities.
The Earth is visible, the way a son would miss his mother, the way
we are going to go ahead and take a look at what they've been up to this morning in preparation for today's launch.
And the stars, even so, are getting closer but remain as cold.
You can see the crew members as they were exiting their cosmonaut hotel crew quarters to begin their final pre-launch activities.
Thanks a lot to everyone. Look at us, please look at us. Everything's gonna be okay. Please come back soon.
The crew then boarded a bus to depart the cosmonaut hotel and took an about 40-minute ride to the integration and suit-up facility at building 254 inside the Baikonur Cosmodrome. And before they departed the cosmonaut hotel, the first order of business was to sign their names on the doors in the rooms where they spent the past 2 weeks. And they departed on that bus to some traditional farewell music
And were on their journey to the launch pad. After arriving at the integration building, each crew member underwent final medical exams and suited up in their so-called launch and entry suits.
One by one, each of the crew members moved to a mock-up of a Soyuz spacecraft seat to allow technicians to conduct pressure checks, ensuring that their suits were free of any leaks.
And there you can see as NASA astronaut Don Pettit moved into the mock-up of the Soyuz spacecraft seat to allow technicians to conduct pressure checks.
Again, this video was captured earlier today as they underwent their pre-launch preparations. And during this process, family members and invited guests looked on across a protective pane of glass to maintain quarantine. And this suit-up procedure was completed a little over 5 hours prior to today's launch.
Let me sit down and then you'll sit down nearby. You can put him on your knees.
And there you can see as the crew completed their suit pressure checks, they went to exchange some final remarks with senior NASA and Roscosmos managers.
Dear friends, there are a lot of people here, so if you already talked to the crew, please leave the room.
Hello, does it work now? I am ready to go.
Hello, Daddy. Hello. Hello. So when you're asking them, can I sleep, will they let you? Are we going to play soccer? Sure. Not only soccer. What else can we play? Hide and seek? And we'll hide in carton boxes. It's a new type of hide and seek.
I really appreciate the email too on all this, yes. Okay, put an email. I should make sure to send a picture.
We are okay.
Okay, I'll probably be shorter.
We wish you a great launch.
Bring devices together.
I really like it. Better than your Armani?
No, this is like a...
Yeah. That's good. That's what I wrote.
So tomorrow you will arrive, right? Hopefully. Yeah. Tell him that you walked in the park and took photos. Yes, we did take photos. I love you. And everybody's crying. Will you miss me? You will? I'll be out there. I will come back. And after this, you will go to a museum. What did you show me? Have a great flight, productive work on the station, great spirits during the whole mission, and as a peacemaker, It's very important for me that the best crew is flying to the station right now, so our planet will be protected for the benefits of love and happiness. Have a great flight and God bless.
After some final farewells with their family, the crew then exchanged some final remarks with
Well, we are
senior
glad
NASA and
to
Roscosmos
see
officials.
you in good mood, healthy. Everything's going to be fine. You know what to do. This is not the first time for you, but you will still need some luck, and we'll be crossing fingers for you. Thank you very much. I think this is one of the most experienced crew. Alexei is having his third flight, Ivan's second flight, and Donald is the fourth flight, and it's important to note that two of them were on Soyuz. So you have spent part of your day, and now you will get into the vehicle, and please distribute your responsibilities and take care of each other, of your crewmates, and make sure you get your flight completed.
A great flight, the best of luck, and I want you to know that our hearts are with you. We'll be watching.
It sucks. You're sitting on the wrong side of the glass.
I wish I was there.
Thank you.
And from the ISS program at NASA, I'll just say we're going to have a lot of great work for you. Wish you the best expedition. Good luck.
Thank you.
While you talked to your relatives, you heard important words from us. Good luck to you. Have a productive mission and get back to Earth. Thank you very much.
And there we saw NASA's Ken Bowersox and Dina Cantella exchange some final words with Don Pettit.
Please.
The crew members then left the Site 254 integration building.
Godspeed. Dear Chairman of the State Commission, the crew of Soyuz MS-26 is ready for flight.
As they left the Site 254 integration building, Ovchinin, the Soyuz commander, reported that he and his crewmates were ready to proceed to the launch pad.
Good luck to you guys. Russia.
The trio then boarded their bus at about 7:42 a.m. Central Time, 5:42 p.m. in Baikonur for the ride to the launch site 31, and that trip took almost 1 hour to complete at the desolate launch site.
They are so great. I don't see, Mom.
After arriving at the launch pad, the crew departed their bus and then climbed a few stairs and waved goodbye to well-wishers before entering the elevator for the ride to the top of the Soyuz rocket. to board their spacecraft, the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft, which they have now been aboard for about the past 2 hours. And you can see NASA astronaut Don Pettit there at the bottom of the stairs.
Losha, good luck.
After waving goodbye to some well-wishers, they then entered the elevator for their ride to the top of the Soyuz rocket, where they then boarded their spacecraft, the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft, which they have now been aboard for about 2 hours. And there you now see a live view of the Soyuz 2.1A booster with the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft atop. And we are about 13 minutes away from today's launch. Today's launch will send NASA astronaut Don Pettit and his Roscosmos crewmates Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Vagner into a short 2-orbit journey to reach the International Space Station. Docking today is scheduled for 2:33 p.m. Central, 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Atop the Soyuz 2.1A booster and strapped into their seats in the descent module of the Soyuz are NASA astronaut Don Pettit and Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Vagner. As mentioned earlier, Ovchinin, as Soyuz commander, is in the center seat of the Soyuz MS-26 with Pettit to his right and Wagner to his left. We are now just under 12 minutes away from launch, about 11 minutes and 40 seconds. In the final moments of the launch countdown, we will see several milestones beginning at about T-minus 7 minutes when pre-launch operations will be complete. And at this point in the countdown, the Soyuz booster will be ready for launch. About a minute later, at T-minus 6 minutes, the physical launch key will be inserted into the launch bunker to transition the launch sequence into automatic mode. Followed about 30 seconds later, the launch control will report that the range in Baikonur is clear and that the Soyuz is ready to begin its journey. About 30 seconds after that, at T-minus 5 minutes, the onboard systems will be switched to onboard control, and the commander's cockpit displays and controls will be activated, and the crew will go ahead and close their helmets. At T-minus 4 minutes, the fuel lines and other elements of the rocket engines will be purged with nitrogen to fireproof them. And then about a minute later, the booster's fuel tanks will be pressurized for flight. And then once we are at T-minus 1.5 minutes, the ground propellant feed will be terminated to the Soyuz booster. 30 seconds after that, the Soyuz will be switched to internal power, and we will be in the final minute of the launch countdown. At T-minus 35 seconds, the first umbilical tower will be separated from the booster, and we will then have auto sequence start.
Copy 5-minute launch readiness. Copy,
check
5-minute
the
launch
Soyuz is
readiness.
ready. Burlock 1 monitored it. We checked
Copy
the Soyuz
all.
is ready. Copy.
A few seconds after that auto sequence start, the ground umbilical to the third stage will be disconnected.
5-minute readiness. Close your pressurized helmets.
And about 15 seconds after that, the second umbilical tower will separate, which will initiate engine sequence start. And then at T-minus 12 seconds, the launch command will be issued, and we will be in the final seconds of the launch countdown before seeing liftoff at 11:23 a.m. Central Time, 12:23 p.m. Eastern Time.
We see you on video camera 2, Burlock 1, Burlock 3. 16-3, this is Burlock 1. I have my pressurized helmet closed, copy, and PSS is ready. Yes.
We are now just under 8.5 minutes away from today's launch of the Soyuz 2.1A booster with the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft atop, carrying NASA astronaut Don Pettit and his Roscosmos crewmates Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Vagner to the International Space Station. And there on your screen, you are seeing an inside view of the Soyuz MS-26 crew. Again, that is NASA astronaut Don Pettit and Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Vagner. We are about 7 minutes and 45 seconds away from today's launch. In just about 30 seconds from now, at T-minus 7 minutes, the pre-launch operations will officially be complete, and at this point in the countdown, the Soyuz booster will be ready for launch.
16-3, 1 minute readiness. Everything is proceeding for the schedule. Control is on board, and we will be broadcasting the launch.
And telemetry will be received from the rocket.
I copy you. Everything is in order on board. We're ready for launch. We see Burlock 1 and Burlock 2 on video camera 1.
And you are hearing some conversations between the crew currently strapped inside that Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft, reporting that they are ready for launch. And we are at just under 6.5 minutes away from today's launch. Again, we had that readiness confirmed about 30 seconds ago at T-minus 7 minutes, and those pre-launch operations are now complete. The Soyuz booster is now ready for launch, and telemetry has been received from the rocket, indicating that all primary and backup systems are set to support today's liftoff. Launch today is precisely timed for the moment where the Earth's rotation will place the Baikonur Cosmodrome in the plane or corridor of the orbit of the space station, which is inclined at 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. And we just heard confirmation that the launch key has been inserted at the launch bunker. It is a real key, a physical key, that transitions the launch sequence into automatic mode. In just a few seconds, launch control should report that the range at Baikonur is clear and that the Soyuz rocket will be ready to begin its journey. We are just under 5.5 minutes away from today's launch. We are about 5 minutes and 5 seconds away from today's launch. In just a few seconds, the onboard systems will be switched to onboard control, and the commander's cockpit displays and controls will be activated. And then the crew members will begin to close their helmets, which puts them on suit oxygen. And we just heard confirmation that the fuel lines and other elements of the rocket engines are being purged with nitrogen to fireproof them by removing vapors of fuel and oxidizer. And you are now seeing a live look of the Soyuz 2.1A booster with the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft atop at the launch pad in Baikonur. And we are now at 4 minutes and 15 seconds away from today's launch of the Soyuz. Today's launch, again, is scheduled for 11:23 a.m. Central Time, 9:23 p.m. in Baikonur. Coming up in about a minute, this optimizes the fuel and helps to add structural support to the rocket. We are now about 3 minutes and 45 seconds away from today's launch. Everything continuing to proceed as planned with no issues being reported from the blockhouse in Baikonur. We are now just over 3 minutes and 15 seconds away from today's launch. In less than 30 seconds, we will see that milestone where the booster's fuel tanks will be pressurized for flight, completely pressurized, and this helps to optimize the flow of fuel and again add some of that structural support to the rocket. After that, at about T-minus...
You have oxidizer and fuel drain and safety valves of launch vehicle closed. Block 1, copy all. Everything is fine on board. The crew members are feeling well. Copy.
And you just heard some words there between the crew in Soyuz, confirming that all 3 crew members are feeling well and prepared for today's launch. And we are just over 2.5 minutes from today's launch of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft carrying NASA astronaut Don Pettit and his Roscosmos crewmates Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Vagner.
Booster propellant tank pressurization initiated.
And we just heard confirmation that the booster's fuel tanks are being pressurized for flight. We are about 2 minutes and 5 seconds away from today's launch. In just about 30 seconds from now, the ground propellant feed will be terminated. And then shortly after that, the Soyuz will be switched to internal power. We are just under 1 minute and 45 seconds away from today's launch. Just under 1.5 minutes to go until the launch of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft. We are at less than 1 minute and 10 seconds away from today's launch. The Soyuz will be switched to internal power shortly. And then about 30 seconds after that, the first umbilical tower will separate and we will have auto sequence start, and then the ground umbilical to the third stage will be disconnected, followed by the second umbilical tower separating with the launch command being issued. We are at 45 seconds away from today's launch and counting.
We have vehicle to internal power.
The first umbilical tower is now separating, and the Soyuz is on internal power. We have 20 seconds until launch and counting.
We have outer sequence initiated. Onboard power. We have oxygen.
We now have engine sequence start. The second umbilical tower is now separating. The engines are at maximum thrust, booster ignition now at full throttle, and we have liftoff of Pettit, Ovchinin, and Vagner, now on their way to the International Space Station as part of a 2-orbit journey. We are seeing good vehicle parameters so far. Vehicle performance is continuing to look good.
Everything is stable. Photo lock 1, everything is stable on board. Remember, you're doing well. Copy.
We are now just over a minute into today's launch.
Yaw, pitch, and roll are nominal.
We are seeing good yaw, pitch, and roll, heading downrange.
On board, remember, you're doing well. Copy.
We are just about a minute and 20 seconds into today's flight. The velocity is over 1,100 miles per hour. Everything continuing to proceed as planned. Just a few seconds, the escape tower will be jettisoned.
Thrusters are operating nominally.
We are about a minute and 55 seconds into today's launch. In just a few seconds, and we now see first stage separation.
Copy.
The crew members reported they are feeling well, and we are having good pitch, roll, and yaw of the vehicle. All parameters on the vehicle are normal. We are now about 2 minutes and 37 seconds into today's flight. The launch shroud will be jettisoned shortly.
We have the control the Auto 5 display, control descent of the nose bearing.
We are now seeing a live view from the Soyuz rocket. The vehicle is stable. The Soyuz is currently traveling at a speed of about 4,700 miles an hour.
Parameters of the rocket booster, structural parameters are nominal. Copy you. Everything's fine on board. Crew members are feeling well. Copy.
We are about 3 minutes and 20 seconds into today's flight, about 5 minutes left until we reach orbital insertion. And we heard confirmation that the second stage thruster continues to perform well.
Recording, everything is fine on board, and crew members are feeling well. Copy.
The vehicle control system performance continues to be good. We are about 3 minutes and 50 seconds into today's flight. In about a minute, we will see the third stage begin to ignite, while the second stage begins to shut down. We have about 30 seconds left of second stage performance.
250 roll are nominal. Photo lock 1, everything is fine on board. Crew members are doing well. Copy.
We are 4 minutes and 45 seconds into today's flight. We have about 4 minutes of powered flight remaining.
Stage 3 thrusters on. 290 seconds.
And we just saw a second stage separation, and the third stage has ignited.
That's Burlock 1. Everything's okay on board. We feel great.
Soyuz is now being propelled by the single engine of the Soyuz third stage.
310
This engine is providing 67,000 pounds of thrust and will burn for about 4 minutes.
Everything's fine on board. Reporting Burlock 1. Copy.
We continue to see good structural parameters on the Soyuz vehicle, and the thrust on the third stage is performing well. We are about 5 minutes and 45 seconds into today's flight. We have about 3 minutes of powered flight remaining.
350 seconds, flight nominal. Burlock 1, copy you. All okay on board. The crew feels great. Standing by for 1932.
We continue to see good roll, pitch, and yaw program on the Soyuz spacecraft. And the vehicle structural parameters are still performing well and look good. We are about 6 minutes and 25 seconds into today's flight.
Stage 3 thrusters are nominal. Burlock 1, copy. All okay on board? Copy.
We have about 2 minutes of powered flight left.
$410 seconds, flight nominal. Burlock 1, copy. All okay on board? Copy.
And we are 7 minutes and 10 seconds into today's flight. Everything continuing to proceed as planned. Everything looking good for the ride to orbit for NASA astronaut Don Pettit and his Roscosmos crewmates Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Vagner.
440 seconds. Vehicle is stable.
We are now 7 minutes and 30 seconds into today's flight. The vehicle remains stable. The velocity of the vehicle is now almost 13,500 miles an hour.
460 seconds. Launch vehicle parameters are nominal. Copy. Burlock 1, all okay on board? Copy.
We have less than a minute of powered flight remaining, and once the third stage delivers the Soyuz to orbit and the module is separated, a series of pre-programmed commands will be executed to prepare the Soyuz for orbital operations. These stored commands, called time-tagged commands, allow many of the Soyuz's systems to be automatically activated by onboard computers at precise times stored in those communicators.
90 seconds. Vehicle stabilization is nominal.
We are now 8.5 minutes into today's flight and about 15 seconds away from third stage cutoff and separation. Roll, pitch, and yaw parameters continuing to be normal.
590 seconds waiting for the separation.
And we now have confirmation of third stage separation. The single liquid-fueled engine has shut down and has dropped away at an altitude of about 126 miles. We are now standing by for solar array deployment.
Burlock, MCC Moscow.
And we have confirmation that the solar arrays and antennas have been deployed. And control of the spacecraft from here on out will be overseen by the Russian Mission Control Center in Koryov,
no issues. Working page 35.
Outside of Moscow.
Copy, correct. 35, close RPV 1 and 2. RPV 1 and 2 are closed. Okay. Standing by for the compartment monitor AKG. 1932-39, pressure NSR 803, in bow 831, and instrumentation compartment 836. Copy all. Next measurements in 5 minutes. Standing by for your steps on page 32. Please monitor RDR command execution and monitor number 1. Burlock 1, copy all.
Following a liftoff at 11:23 and 12 seconds a.m. Central Time, 9:23 and 12 seconds p.m. in Baikonur, and a 8-minute and 45-second ride to orbit, NASA astronaut Don Pettit and Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Vagner are safely in orbit to begin their 2-orbit journey.
Yes, correct.
With the trio now in orbit, there is a record of 19 people currently in orbit in space.
Are you ready to receive the data from 1926? Yes, we're ready. 17. 17 decimal 25, 18, 16 decimal 8, 19, 268, 20, 1 decimal 0, 21st, 1 decimal 8, 22, 341, 23rd, 339, 24th, 18 decimal 0, 25th, 17 decimal 8, 26, 267, fuel 88.
You are now seeing a view of the internal Soyuz control panel. This is what the Soyuz crew is currently seeing on board. Again, that Soyuz crew is comprised of NASA astronaut Don Pettit and Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Vagner.
The long test of course 1 is complete.
The Soyuz crew, being carried inside that Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft, have now begun their short 2-orbit chase to reach the International Space Station. Again, docking today is scheduled for 2:33 p.m. Central, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So following a launch today at 11:23 and 12 seconds a.m. Central Time, 9:23 and 12 seconds p.m. in Baikonur, the vehicle saw good roll, pitch, and yaw parameters as it began heading downrange. We saw good performance from all 3 stages.
Current LOS 1943.
And at about 8 minutes and 45 seconds into today's flight, we saw that 3rd stage cutoff and separation. And then the Soyuz capsule at that point and the crew inside were safely in orbit, and the spacecraft began automatically executing its pre-programmed commands to deploy the solar arrays and antennas. And we have received confirmation that that deployment was successful, and then control of the spacecraft is now being overseen by the Russian Mission Control Center in Koryov outside of Moscow, and you're seeing a live view of that mission control from the balcony.
Course 1 string test is complete, no issues.
Вас понял.
Copy.
Бурлаки, мы также ждем от вас 5-минутный замер АКГ.
Waiting for 5-minute AKG measurement.
Liftoff of a Soyuz 2.1A booster carrying the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft with NASA astronaut Don Pettit and Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexei Ovchinin and Ivan Vagner occurred on time at 11:23 and 12 seconds a.m. Central Time, 12:23 and 12 seconds p.m. Eastern Time and 9:23 and 12 seconds p.m. in Baikonur from Launch Pad 6, Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. All 3 stages operated as expected during an 8-minute and 45-second ride to place Soyuz in its preliminary orbit where it is now. The Soyuz spacecraft will now begin a short 2-orbit chase to arrive at its final destination, the International Space Station. Docking today is scheduled for 2:33 p.m. Central Time, 3:33 p.m. Eastern Time, with live NASA coverage beginning at 1:30 p.m. Central Time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We will follow that up with live coverage of hatch opening and welcoming remarks beginning at 4:30 p.m. Central Time, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, this is Mission Control Houston.